Welcome to the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, where you get multifamily investing made real. Learn from top players in the real estate investment world as they share their secrets with you and discover proven strategies on apartment investing that actually work. To learn more about Wheelbarrow Profits, visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. Now to your hosts, Jake and Gino.
Hello, everybody. This is Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily madman, and the guy who had me on a conference call until 11:30 last night, Mr. Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going today?
Jake, it's good. It was actually 11:45 last night.
Prick. Today's very important guest is Michael Saporito. Mike is a vice president and relationship manager at Mountain Commerce Bank here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We have done 3 deals with Mike, and we're actually doing another one this Friday. We like working with him because he's the kind of banker you can trust and count on. Today, Mike is going to take us through the steps of networking with a banker for the first time and some strategies on financing your first deal. This podcast aligns with the finance right portion of our framework. So without further ado, Mr. Saporito, welcome to the show.
Morning, guys.
So, tell us a little bit about how you got into banking.
You know, I got into banking really through my dad. He was in banking my entire life. And when I went into college, I knew pretty much my freshman year that I wanted to be a banker. So I started out on the finance path and graduated from college and started banking 2 weeks later. So I have kind of known for a long time.
Mike, why don't you talk to us about your current role with the bank now?
Yeah, currently, as Jake said, I'm a vice president and a relationship manager. I handle mostly commercial loans, but really all types of loans in the Knoxville and surrounding areas. We cover Blount County, Anderson County, and most of the surrounding areas of those cities as well. So I'm responsible for loan and production and deposit production for the area.
Okay, so we've obviously done a few deals with the bank, and we're partnering with the bank. But the one thing I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, tell us a little bit about your bank, because I know you guys are growing right now, but I feel like you're a little bigger than a community bank. Or do you consider yourselves a community bank? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we like to consider ourselves a community bank, but with the capabilities of a big bank, a big regional bank. We have a core operating system that is built for banks up to $5 billion in assets. We're currently about $500 million in assets. So we're a relatively small bank in the scheme of things. But we have a legal lending limit of just over $10 million. So we can do a pretty sizable loan in this area and really have the service of a community bank. But like I said, the products of a SunTrust or any other large bank that's out there in the area.
Mike, when did you start with the bank?
And I started, like I said, 2 weeks out of school. It was January 1st, 2007. So I'm coming up. It'll be 9 years here at the beginning of next year.
So you started with the bank from the very, very beginning, and you've seen the bank grow, huh?
Yeah, when I was actually the third person hired in our Knoxville office. And at this point, I'm the most tenured person in our Knoxville office. So when I started, we had no phones, no internet. We were in an old building that wasn't even a bank building. We had no drive-through, no ATM. It was interesting to say the least. So
that's great.
So it's pretty cool that you guys started at I guess the height of the market at 2007, and then 2008 comes the crash. And how was the growing pains? Yeah, how was the growing pains? I mean, during that time, you guys survived, and it seems like you're thriving. What made you guys survive, and what made you guys flourish now?
Really, there was a couple years there that it was pretty scary. Our Texas ratio was very high. We had done a bunch of raw land deals, which, as everybody knows, is what really got people in trouble back in 2008, 2009, was non-income producing properties. And we had done quite a few developments in the area, and we took back a lot of lots. But we fought through it, continued to make good loans, and we were able to shed all of our OREO. And, the last 3.5 years have just been wonderful years. We've surpassed budget in pretty much every category, including net income. So we've really come out of, ever since probably late 2011, it's been really strong for us. So
So what did you guys learn from that period? Have you guys changed your lending criteria? Have you said I'm not doing land anymore? Or what have you guys learned from those lean years?
We have learned quite a bit. We still do land, but we're much more conservative on our lending. I mean, we were probably 30-40% in land development back then. Now we're
Wow.
probably in the 5 to 10% range. And, we really make a focus to know the project, know what it's going to take to get out, and know the borrower, because that's the most important thing. If the borrower and you are in a good relationship, you're going to work through it together if something does come up. They're less likely to walk away than somebody that you just randomly meet on the street.
Mm-hmm.
If we could jump back just for a second, you were talking about sort of the differences in the banks. For the listeners out there, can you describe the differences between, the community banks, the regional, and some of the larger banks? Can you describe some of those differences?
Yeah, I mean, here in Knoxville, we don't have a lot of the national banks. We have Wells Fargo has a very small presence here. Bank of America has a very small presence here. The regional banks are probably the biggest competition to us, and that's the First Tennessee, SunTrust, Regions. Our advantage on them is that we have a quicker decision making because a lot of those people have to go to an Atlanta or a Birmingham or wherever their home office is to make a lot of decisions. The regional banks have really taken the power out of the hands of the people on the street. Where here we are in two cities, Johnson City and Knoxville. My local president here can make a decision on loans up to about $2.5 million. So, it helps us to be able to respond quickly. And, there's no 1-800 numbers. You're calling me, you call me on my cell phone, you can call me, at my office. We're just a lot more accessible, I think, than a lot of the regional banks are.
And that's very important because when you have a contract and your back's against the wall to get something done from an investor standpoint, that is very important to get the deal done because you can't be waiting around forever for someone to call Atlanta or something or wherever you may be the regional office and waiting on a decision. People are taking their sweet time. It's important to be able to get it done quickly.
Oh yeah, you know it. I mean, there's been times a day or two before closing where something changes and you got to go back and get approval, and that's important to be able to do that quickly and not delay the closing.
Yes, for sure.
Mike, what on your bank specifically, what do you guys like to lend on? What is your specialty?
Most of my group, pretty much everybody but me, came from the SunTrust private banking division. So they had a real base in medical and income producing properties. So that's really where we concentrate. We work with a lot of affluent individuals, business owners, doctors, lawyers, and then a lot of the stuff they invest in. So income producing, I would say, is our number one goal. We do a lot of CRE, as it's referred to. We don't do a lot of the big corporate banking. We don't really do asset-based lines. We like tangible assets that we can go out and see and make sure they're still there.
So dive into that a little more. You guys are primarily lending on income-producing properties. What's the philosophy behind that?
Well, most of the people we deal with have outside income. So the project that we're doing may not necessarily be for them to pay their bills. And that helps because if you've got, let's say, an apartment complex that's at 95% occupancy, it's kicking along real well, and then something happens, a new apartment complex comes online and it pulls 15% of your tenants and you drop to 80% occupancy. If you've got somebody that's purely relying on that as their source of income, it's going to hurt them. If they've got an outside job, then they're still going to be able to help the project and keep it along until they get it back up to the occupancy they want.
Gotcha. So you guys are primarily dealing with investment properties.
Mostly, yeah. We do some owner occupied. Like I said, we've done plenty of medical owner occupied, but most of what we do is income producing.
Gotcha.
Let me circle back 1 second. Also, what I wanted to ask you is, how do you guys, want to grow your bank? How do you grow the bank? By demand deposits, and how do you get out more loans?
We grow our bank organically. It is from internal referrals and just growth of the customers we already have. We don't really cold call. We don't do any sales.com or anything like that to get leads. We base it purely off the relationships of our bankers. We're out in the community. We're involved in a lot of civic activities. I'm involved with the Boys and Girls Club. We have other people that are involved with Habitat for Humanity. So, getting out there, going to chamber events, that's the important thing. You got to meet people, and that's the easiest way is just to go out and see people.
Okay.
Kind of an old school approach to it, huh?
Yeah, and it's worked really well for us. The bank's we'll be actually 9 years old in September. So we bought a charter, out of Irwin. So the bank's really about 115 years old. But this group of ownership has had it for 9 years now, and we've grown the bank from about 84 million in assets to 500 million in that 9 years. So it's been great growth over the last almost decade.
Yeah, I think we met through a referral from Rick Gentry. Yeah.
Yeah, real estate. See, and we like to get referrals from people we know. We had done some deals with Rick before. He kind of knew what we lent on and what kind of borrowers we were looking for. And, he was dead on with this one. It was a perfect fit for us and hopefully for you all too. So.
No, it's been great. It's been great. So we want to transition a little bit into the customer. So, when someone's trying to, maybe do their first multifamily investment, right? How do you guys evaluate that person? What are you looking for, in terms of credibility when that someone comes to you for the first time?
Yeah, when they come in, I think the most important thing is to be prepared and know the project. You need to know your occupancy rates. You need to know the rental rates. You need to be able to answer questions on the financials. If somebody's looking through an income statement and wants to know what a certain thing is, just to be able to have information. And if you don't know it, it's okay. Obviously, you're not going to know everything, but, just as much information as you can have when you come into a meeting, the better.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you, do you guys tend to shy away from new investors, or do you say, hey, you know what, this might be a great relationship?
We don't really shy away from new investors. We'd like to see them start with something small. If somebody's going out there and trying to jump on a 200-unit complex as their first deal and they've never managed an apartment complex, we may, try to scale them back a little bit. But we're more than happy to deal with somebody that's new to the market, especially if they fit our criteria of having an outside income or some liquidity saved up to help a project if it didn't go as planned.
I think me and Jake stressed that a lot, is to start small, and we obviously started small with a small 25-unit property. A couple of reasons why. Number one, you make a mistake. It's a small mistake. It's not a big mistake. You make a big mistake on a 200-unit deal, you can wipe yourself out, and you investing career is over before it even starts. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's a real issue too. I mean, I had lunch with a guy yesterday who wants to start investing, doesn't really know where to begin. Is having a mental block because he said, he's like, I don't have any credibility. How do I get started here? And that's sort of why we were sitting down talking, because that's one of his fears is, I haven't done it before. How do I get in the game? And that's what people struggle with. So do you have any advice for someone like that besides being prepared with the numbers? How should they present themselves to you for the first time if they legitimately haven't done a deal yet? What should they do to impress Michael Saporito coming into the bank for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people, I think it's best for them maybe to partner with somebody that has some experience to start, maybe do their first deal with somebody that's familiar with the market. Outside of that, just like I said, we're going back to being prepared a little bit, but I don't think there's really anything to impress. Being referred, if somebody knows you that I know well, that helps. That gives me some confidence in the person. They feel like you're capable of doing a project like this. But, some people just may require an additional borrower that can help them along the way.
Do you remember a business plan book that we gave you on the Park Place deal?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let me ask you that, because that was the first deal that we did together. It was 136 units. Did that make an impact? Did that make a difference when you guys were evaluating us for the first time?
Oh yeah, definitely. See, I mean that's the definition of being prepared right there. I mean, you came in with a full book with a history of what you had done, background on the borrowers. There was information on how you were going to improve the project. You had a specific investment strategy of going after, mom and pop run
He did read it,
apartment
Gino.
complexes.
I can't believe it. I think it's the first person.
Wow.
Yeah, so you were actually looking. You had a plan, and you guys executed it, and that was impressive to us. You had a couple, like you said, it was the third one you'd done, so you'd already done two, and shown good performance there. So, yeah, I think that was excellent way to present yourself to a bank.
And I think that's the important thing. We had only done a couple of deals, but we had niched it down, as people say, just like your bank seems like you guys niche it down with the medical and with the income producing properties. You start with a strong point and you get really excellent at it. And then if you want to jump around and do something else, you do something else. But, that's, I think, one of the keys in real estate is to really niche it down, learn something really well, specialize. And then, if you want to expand, you go ahead and you expand.
I agree.
Okay, so someone's getting into their first deal. It's 20 units, and they're really close to getting the contract signed. Just say where they're at that point in the process. At what point should they have been dealing with you 2 months ago, or what point should they reach out to a banker to start setting up their financing?
I think at the point when you identify a property, you should probably reach out to a banker at that point. You don't really want to wait until the contract's signed because then you're on a deadline, and you don't know how quick the turnaround time is with the bank you're dealing with. So, once you identify a property, I would go to a bank, let them know, what your plan is, what you're looking for term-wise, what, amortization, and then that way, the bank can almost give you a pre-approval and say, yeah, we're on board with you. Move forward, get the contract, send it to me, and let's get this deal done.
And Mike, can you lend a hand to, a newbie investor? Let's say like you said, he comes early, he brings you the deal. He says, Mike, how does this deal look to you? Have you helped investors actually analyze deals?
Yeah. I mean, we have an experience in a lot of different fields, so if somebody's out there and we think they're paying too much or, there's certain things they need to look at, whether it's, an environmental or an inspection, if you're a new investor, you may not know those types of things and what could really be a cost issue for you once you obtain the property. So we try to help them along the way from step one as much as we can. You don't want to get into a lender liability situation, but you want to just point out everything you can because they're new to the game and they may not know what the real issues underneath could be.
So that's an awesome point because if you're a newbie investor and you want to go with these regional or these super large banks like a Wells, they're not going to give that kind of service. I know that for a fact that they just want to, push paper and get the deal done. It seems like you guys go that extra yard and, really give that customer service and really help us out as investors. That's great.
Well, and the way we see it is, we're helping ourselves out as well. We don't want to go into a deal that's a bad deal either. So, it doesn't help the bank any to take over a bad deal. So we want it to be as tied up on the front end as possible.
Taking your banker hat off for a minute, a new investor, they have a deal they're working on, they're looking at it, they haven't got a contract signed or anything. How many banks should they engage, would you say, at that point?
I think 2 to 3. I think you definitely want more than one opinion, unless you just have a very good relationship with somebody, maybe personally. But I would say 2 to 3. You don't want to go much more than that, just because it's a lot of time to go through and provide financial to every bank. But I definitely think you get a regional and a community kind of see the differences on what they're offering and what their plan is for it.
And you're just talking about paperwork. What do you like to see? What documents do you like to see for an investor to start analyzing the deal?
We require 2 years personal and business tax returns, and then a personal financial statement, that lists out all the assets and liabilities of the borrower or guarantor. And then we want to see something on the project, whether it's new or projections on a project. We want to see kind of what the project's going to do or what you think it's going to do to see if it's going to support the debt load.
And then as far as actuals, do you want 2 years of actual tax returns? What do you want from the deal itself
Correct.
also?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 years actual tax returns. A lot of people extend their tax returns these days, so we'll get company prepared financials or a rent roll. Something that just kind of tells us what the current income situation is.
And that's the key, right, Mike? I mean, actual, because a lot of these guys try to give you pro formas. What do you tell an investor when you see your pro forma?
Well, it depends on how realistic the pro forma is. I saw a pro forma the other day. I saw a pro forma the other day. It projected 100% occupancy from day one. And it's like, well, that's not realistic. There's going to be a ramp up period, so it will look at expenses and see just how realistic. And a lot of times we'll take it and we'll stress test it and say, well, what if you're wrong by 30%? Does it work then? Where's the break even point?
Sorry, it's just funny because we've seen some pretty aggressive, to be polite, pro formas in the past. So okay, you got the new investor starting out with you. They get a signed contract. From that point, if you guys are committed to each other, how long is it going to take to get a deal closed?
I think conservatively it's probably 4 weeks. The appraisal is generally the longest part on that. A commercial appraisal can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how busy the market is and how busy the individual appraiser is.
Right. We've definitely seen that in the past.
We could have a whole talk on commercial appraisals, Jake and I, and how we think they appraise properties. I mean, just getting off the cuff of that, how do you feel about commercial appraisals as far as when they come in? I mean, do you take them? I wouldn't say with a grain of salt, but they come in so many different. Some numbers are higher, some are lower. What do you look at when you're looking at a commercial appraisal?
Well, we generally look most specifically at the income approach because that's where they're going to derive most of the value. And, they're going to take the net operating income and they're going to cap it at a certain rate, which right now apartments have a very low cap rate. And that's a very strong field to invest in right now. So we look at that specifically and see if he's justified his cap rate, where he's coming from with that. Is he pulling a cap rate from the Atlanta suburban area, because that's not the Knoxville market. And then secondly, we look a lot at the comps they use. Once again, is it local comps? Is it a comparative? Is he comping a brand new building with a 50-year-old building? Those are the two things that we probably look at most specifically.
I think the reason, some of them I feel like get a little too hung up on the comp approach, and we prefer almost a straight income approach because I think it's the most fair because the numbers really, if you're going on actuals, they don't lie. So that's what we
right.
We hope for, but sometimes there's definitely a blend when you get these things back, but.
Well, we've had problems getting appraisals because we run our property so efficiently, and they look at our numbers, and we'll be running a property for, let's say, 3,000 a unit, and the bank will want to plug in their number at 3,600 a unit. And we've had a track record, so that really will really destroy our appraisal. So we've come up against that,
Yeah. A lot of times the appraisers have set numbers they want to use for vacancy and capital expenditures and everything else, and we prefer to go off actual as well. If there's a history of these numbers out there, that's about as accurate as you can get.
Yeah, and it's fair, but anyway. Let's transition a little bit to actual properties now. I know you discussed some of the things you liked and how we prepared and things for the deals that we've done. What have you liked specifically about the projects, the properties themselves that we've financed through your bank?
Well, all the ones that you guys have brought to us have had a very high occupancy rate, which is very important. If you don't have an uphill battle to start, it helps significantly. All you really have to do is maintain the current occupancy, and then, you guys are very good at reducing expenses and going in there and doing a number of different things. So I think that that's what we like best about it, is the fact that it was fully occupied. It was in a pretty good area, in an area that we were familiar with, most importantly.
But what happens if somebody does come with you with a property like ours that has a lower occupancy rate? Do you still look at that deal, or do you say it's just a little too risky for us?
No, if it's a lower occupancy rate, we may look at a lower loan to value. We like to mitigate the risk. So we would do, let's say, 85% on a deal that was completely occupied. We may do 80% if you've got 15 or 20% vacancy. We want to see that the current situation can cash flow the debt. And that's the most important thing to us, is that it can pay the bill. So we'll mitigate it with a lower loan to value, or, maybe an additional guarantor depending on the situation.
So that's great. I'm glad you just said that, because a lot of people get stuck on that number that banks want 20% down, and we've done deals with you with 15% down. So, I mean, the quality of the deal really depends upon what kind of loan you're willing to give. So all you investors out there, you've got a good deal going to a bank, they're willing to lend, and they're willing to take less down if the deal is great. Right, Mike?
Definitely, yeah.
Do you have a specific criteria for lending on multifamily? Are there like 5 things that you guys look for specifically?
We really don't have a specific criteria. Like I said, the first thing we're going to look at is the condition and the age of the complex. Where's it located? Is it located in the heart of West Knoxville, which is a very, upper end area, or is it located in an area that's not as desirable? Because, people want to live in desirable areas, and especially you got to match it up to what the rental rates are. If you're out somewhere in a suburban area that's not as desirable and you're wanting, $1,000 for a 1-bedroom unit, then it's not realistic, and we're not really as interested in it. But if it's in a good location and reasonably priced, and you've got a plan, then we're pretty open to it.
Mike, I wanted to ask you a question about the commercial lending. Can you tell viewers the difference between commercial lending and residential lending?
Yeah, it's significant. Commercial lending is not nearly as regulated as residential is.
Okay.
A consumer mortgage probably has 3 times the paperwork that a normal commercial loan does.
Really? Oh, okay.
You could do a $5 million commercial loan, and about half the time you could do a residential mortgage. And, it's a multitude of reasons. It's a lot of people, that's the biggest purchase they're ever going to make in their life, is their personal residence. And, it's personal, they are attached to it. So, a lot of times on a commercial deal, it's strictly business, there's not really feelings involved with it. And so it makes it much easier on the commercial side. And usually your commercial borrowers are a little more familiar with the process and know what to expect when it comes to closing costs and the due diligence. So it's just the borrowers is usually a little more sophisticated on a commercial deal than when you're doing just a normal home.
It's a really good point to bring up, because most people, their first real estate deal is their house, right? And so they need to understand sort of that transition from, the residential to getting into maybe their first multifamily, commercial deal. I will say one thing about the emotional part. I tend to get a little emotional. Just saying, I get a little carried away. But and Mike, you saw that a few weeks ago when I was in your bank, and I had apologized for that phone call. I'm just saying, but
he was a little upset,
a little crazy. No, that's really good to bring up, though.
And Mike, can you just for the viewers, commercial? What is the stipulation for commercial loan and residential? What are the differences as far as unit mix, unit numbers?
Residential really is a single family home in our eyes.
Okay.
If you go out and buy a house that you're going to rent, that's a residential deal. Anything that's more than 4 units is considered multifamily, which would go into the commercial bucket.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So here's something I want to talk about a little bit. In our view, we look at multifamily as like the most rock solid investment from the bank standpoint because it's income producing and people will always need a place to live. Okay.
Right.
What is your take on that? What is the from the bank standpoint? What is the most desirable type of real estate for you guys to take on?
I think multifamily is right up there with medical for us. Medical, you just have the strong income of the borrowers. But with multifamily, you've got a diversification factor that you don't have with medical. Medical, you're relying on the operation of that business. Multifamily, if you've got a 50-unit complex, you're relying on 50 people to go to work and pay their bills. So if one or two people fall, it's not as big a deal as if you've got a single tenant building and that company fails.
Great point.
So we've had great success. We have a zero loss factor in the multifamily field in the last 5 years. So, we haven't lost a single penny on a multifamily loan. And I think that's the major reason, like you said, people need a place to live, and there's some room for error essentially on a multifamily deal. You can have a couple people that don't pay rent. You got to kick them out. You got to evict them. You got to take them to court and then replace them with a new one. But it's not going to kill you.
And I like to say multifamily is not rocket science. We know, plenty of people out there who own and run multifamily that don't really put, the time into it that it needs, and they don't give it the attention that it needs, but it still pays its bills. It still supports itself. It's interesting, to say the least.
Mike, you're just talking about REOs and taking your properties back. Can you just talk a little bit about the REO department? How can investors get into your REO, and if you have any inventory, how can they access that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to get into to properties, because generally when we take them back, we write them down to 90% of market value. When we take a property in, we get an appraisal, and then we have to mark it down 10% for disposal cost. And generally, we're willing to get rid of it at that price because we've already recognized the loss on the remainder of it. The easiest way is really to build a relationship with the bank. It's hard to, there's generally a special asset person in every bank. If you can get connected with that special asset person, they're more than happy to call you every time they get a property because, we don't want to keep it on the books. And if it's something we think we have a customer that would be interested in, we try to make that call right away. So if you have a relationship and they know what you're looking for, when they run across it, they may be willing just to give you the call and let you know they have something. Because like I said, we don't want to hold it. We want it off our books as quick as possible.
So, Mike, that's where our credibility kit would come in play. I would come into the bank and say, listen, I'm looking for the special asset person here. Here's my credibility book. This is what I do. That's a great way to build, that rapport. And it's funny because I guess you guys don't like to advertise REOs because it's showing that the bank is not doing a good job because they're taking back their loans. So that's probably one of the reasons why it might be hard for investors to actually access these REOs. Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We, I had one for Jake the other day that a customer, it wasn't an Oreo, but I knew obviously that he invested in multifamily. I had a customer that wanted to sell multifamily, and so I hooked them up with each other. And to me, it's not important on whether the deal works, but just to present the property for him, and it helps out my other borrower as well. So relationships are important.
Completely agree with that one. Any other advice for the first time investor or the early investor networking with the bank? Any other strategies or recommendations for these type of folks?
Well, I'm kind of the same way that I go out and network, and I am involved in the chamber and in Boys and Girls Club. I think you do the same thing. I'm not a big fan of the actual networking groups. That's just me personally. I feel like a lot of that is just going to lunch, and it's a lot of the same people you see all the time. But getting out in the community and doing things is how you meet people. And, whether it's a banker or somebody that wants to sell a property, that's the best way, in my opinion, to get out there and meet a banker. Besides, you just walk in off the street, there's usually some skepticism for a banker of why this guy's just walking in, and why he didn't have a relationship wherever he's banking now, because you probably at least have a personal checking account somewhere. But that's just my first loan was a walk-in off the street, and it was the only loan I've ever had go bad. So I'm a little skeptical about walk-ins.
Oh,
really?
So that's the horror story right there.
That is, yeah. Only loan I've ever had go bad was the first loan I made. It was on a steamroller, a piece of construction equipment. And yeah, that's the only one I've ever had go bad, and it was the only walk-in I've ever done. So
no more construction equipment for Big Mike.
I was going to say, let's say, how long did it take for that loan to go bad? I mean, that must have been a quick loan to go bad, correct?
it took about it was about a year to go bad.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it was ugly.
I just want to chime in with a little piece of advice because everything I heard from Mike just now is that a referral is the best way to sort of get in front of him if you don't meet him in the community. Work with your brokers. If a broker's setting you up with a deal and it's a credible broker, they should have a network of bankers that they know, similar to how we were recommended to Mike, that they should be able to refer you to some good bankers that lend in multifamily. That's probably the place you should start. Just a quick piece of advice for the listeners out there.
No, I agree. I agree completely. I mean, real estate agents are excellent referral sources for bankers. And like you said, we have a comfortability with them and they know what we're going to lend on. So they usually set you up with the right type of bank and the right type of borrower.
Yeah.
Mike, do you work with specific real estate agents? I mean, do you have your own group of guys that you like, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've got probably 5 to 7 guys that I deal with, that either have referred me stuff in the past or borrowed themselves with me. So yeah, we definitely have a group that we're familiar with and that we put a little more credence into their referrals than just a random one. But
Okay.
What about, so the broker, we talk a lot about building your team because it's very important to have team members in place because you can't do it all. And you need good folks that you surround yourself with. Like we have you, we have Concord Title, all these guys that we work with. So if someone came to you and the broker referred them, what kind of other team members could you refer to a new investor to help them build their team?
Well, I think having a good title attorney like Concord Title is very important for you, and having a good CPA or at least somebody who does the books is important. We like to see usually, maybe financials at least at the end of the year, maybe halfway through the year, depending on, if we're doing something new. And, while QuickBooks and Quicken are fine produced by the individual, we have a little more confidence in numbers that are produced by a CPA or some kind of bookkeeper that's outside. So we have a couple of CPAs that we deal with that are familiar with the real estate industry that we usually refer people to. And then, of course, we have a couple different title companies that we deal with as well that are very familiar with how we do business. So,
yeah. The point that I was trying to make is it's always important if you're just getting started, ask everybody that you're dealing with. Who do you use? Who would you recommend? It really helps to build. You'll start to see quickly who the real players are in town and who the people you want to connect with are. It'll come out quick. So,
There's one question that I wanted to ask you, Mike. What have you seen difference in changes in the last 9 years since you started working in lending in the actual market itself?
It's been obviously very significant. My 9 years have been about polar opposites from when I started to where I'm at now. Obviously, just rates in general have been much lower. When I started banking, prime was I think it was at 5.25 maybe, and we're down to 3.25 now, and we've been there for 5 years probably.
Okay.
So just overall rates have been extremely low. I can remember a 7% deal was a pretty good deal in 2010. Now, a good 5-year rate's closer to 4%. So rates have just come down tremendously. And that really has been the biggest drive. It increases people's purchasing power because that rate's so much lower than what it was 10 years ago. So.
And let me ask you, regulations. Have regulations changed? Have they been more stringent?
Definitely. They're starting to loosen back up a little bit now. But there was a rule that banks couldn't lend more than 300% of their capital in commercial real estate and 100% of their capital in acquisition and development loans. And that rule has been out there for 100 years, but has never really been enforced. Well, in 2008, when everything started crashing, people were at 250% of their capital in development and 500 or 600% in commercial real estate.
Wow.
And they really started cracking down on that. I mean, they went in and they made people just start shedding loans. Either if they matured, you asked them to leave. If they were bad, they wanted you to write them down. I mean, so the regulators were in here every year for probably 5 years. Now we're at a point where every 18 to 24 months they come in. And, a lot of that has to do with the stability of our bank and how we turned it around, that they aren't as concerned with us as they were back then. But yeah, it seemed like every other month we had, the FDIC or the state of Tennessee or our internal auditors or, there was always somebody in here looking at our books and looking at our loans, to really go through them. And, they pick through every single thing when they come through. They'll pick up a file and make sure every I is dotted and T is crossed.
So you guys really know, if you're a savvy investor, a savvy broker, banker, you guys definitely know when the market starts getting frothy, because these loans start getting higher and your capital, I can see the reserves are just getting larger and larger, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Gino, you have anything else from Mike?
Nope.
I think I'm good. Hey, we really appreciate the call, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Mike, thanks for your time. This is a great call.
Thanks for talking to me.
Okay.
I
Talk to you soon.
appreciate it, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
We trust that you enjoy the Wheelbarrow Profits podcast. Visit jakeandgino.com, your one-stop shop for everything multifamily. See you next time when Jake and Gino share more of their investing secrets with you.